This is the Electric Bike Action Podcast, devoted to all things on two wheels, and sometimes three, with an electric motor. Electric Bike Action magazine is a print and digital magazine that reviews bikes and shares the latest news about e-bikes. I'm Tony Donaldson, the editor of the magazine and the host of this podcast. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and, if you like, a review to help us reach more people. You can also check out our website, electricbikeaction.com, and check out our Facebook page and Instagram account. Ravindra Kempaiah, or Ravi to his friends, is a PhD student currently at the University of Illinois at Chicago. He researches battery electrode technology, and like our last interview with Professor Jeff Don, he's going to be one of the people to help us get to the next level of technology in batteries. I met him years ago at one of the Electric Bike Expo events and was immediately struck by his enthusiasm about electric bikes. He set out to promote them by riding from Crazy Lenny's e-bikes in Madison, Wisconsin to Stromer's headquarters in San Diego, California. It was 5,100 miles, and it broke the Guinness World Records longest journey made by a motorized bicycle. That was in 2016, and we covered it in the pages of our magazine with a feature story. He will soon be moving to Canada to work for Professor Don. In the meantime, he chased down and shattered the Guinness World Record for the most distance traveled in 24 hours, and that story is coming out in our December 2019 print and digital editions. We recorded this episode shortly after he broke the records and after he'd had time to recover. Hey Ravi, how are you?
Hi Tony, I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Good to talk to you again. And it was really fun to get to see you shatter two world records at once. Going back, you set the world record for the longest distance traveled on an e-bike, and we covered that in an issue of the magazine, and you've had a lot of stories about it. Tell me a little bit about that. Yeah, first tell me how you came into that part of it, and tell me a little bit of like who you are and what you're about.
Sure, Tony. Thank you. I know Tony and we have been some friends for almost 5 years, and I first of all I want to thank you for being part of the whole journey. You helped me, you were supportive when I did the first record, and then you came all the way from California to Canada to support the next second endeavor. So I'm thankful for that.
Of course.
Coming back, currently I'm a PhD scholar at the University of Illinois working on advanced electrode materials. I mainly use computational tools using quantum mechanical framework, something called density functional theory and molecular dynamics, and design, how should we design the next generation of electrode materials that go inside the lithium-ion battery. So that's what I'm doing right now. But back in 2013, the whole journey started in 2013 when I was in Maryland at that time, and I really didn't want to purchase a gasoline car, and I was looking for an alternative way of transportation. And something called e-bikes caught my eye, and I started exploring more about it. And back in early 2013, the market was still very new, and there were not many options back then. Nowadays, we have thousands of options, but back in early 2013, the options were still minimal. But anyway, I was able to test ride a couple of bikes by BH and then Prodeco Technologies and Pedego bikes. And I thought, wow, this is absolutely game-changing. I was so blown away by it. For almost 2 months, I couldn't get over the fact that there's already a technology that is so good, and it could solve the transportation problem for a certain segment of people, for example, students and somebody who has a shorter commute. Let's say if your commute is less than 8 to 10 miles, you could totally do that comfortably on an e-bike. So I started, I purchased an e-bike and I got into it, and I thought, well, there is, somebody should promote this technology because it is absolutely life-changing and game-changing in many ways. And by then I had made some friends in the industry. I had a couple of friends, Mr. Len Mattioli, who had a huge store in Madison. And I had known the folks at a company called Stromer. Stromer makes excellent commuting-oriented e-bikes.
Yes.
So and you have experience in all of that. So I thought, okay, what can we do in the space that will bring attention and it'll catch the eye and make people understand that there's a technology that can be absolutely game changing. And at the same time, I learned about the whole group of extraordinary people. These are the racers or riders who have completed something called Race Across America. And your friend Shauna is one of them. These
Yes.
are absolutely incredible human beings. What they could do is absolutely mind blowing. I know I'm still in awe of it. And even after 4 years, 5 years, when I look at them, and I look at them with utmost respect, because these are people at the very pinnacle of human physiology. They can do 400 miles a day, every day for 8 days. And I thought this is the most astonishing thing. And I thought, all right, I think e-bikes can transform a common man like me to their elite level, or at least if not that level, do something impressive. And I was reading about a young engineer from Rochester. His name was Troy Rank, and he had set a world record, by going across the country. And I thought, there's some room here. We could do something, and we could promote e-bikes as an alternative car replacement. So that's how the journey started. I put in an application with Guinness. They accepted it. And finally, in 2016, 2016 was the 100th anniversary of National Park Service. And the national park system in America is absolutely the most beautiful thing this country has. And just today, there was a news that e-bikes are being, allowed in all national parks.
Oh, I was so excited when I heard that. That's just, this is the tipping point that we needed.
Exactly. So in 2016, National Park Service was celebrating their 100th anniversary, and I wanted to visit as many national parks as possible as a sustainability proponent. So I started from Madison and ended the ride in San Diego, covering 5,100 miles. And when I got back, when I started, calculating how much energy I used, I realized that even if I take the national average, my cost of electricity to travel 5,100 miles crisscrossing the nation was less than $7. It depends. If you're living in Portland, you have the least electricity cost compared to if you're somebody who is living in Connecticut or Washington D.C. or some other place. But even if you take the worst average, you're looking at $7 electricity cost to cover 5,100 miles. Wow, this is absolutely amazing. So that's how the whole journey started.
Wow, that is absolutely amazing. And you had good support from
Stromer,
yeah.
and they lent me a bike to ride across the country. I had great support from people at Crazy Lenny's e-bikes, and he sent one of his lead technician in the support vehicle. So it was a supported ride. It was not a completely unsupported ride. But Stromer bikes don't have throttle feature, so you have to pedal all the time. And I was on the bike most of the time, almost 10 to 12 hours a day, and then get some rest in the evenings. So the record that we just did a few weeks ago in Canada was of a different nature. This was more in line with providing a benchmark or a concrete data set to show or highlight the efficiency of e-bikes. So electric cars are 2 to 3 times more efficient than the best hybrid cars, because the best hybrid Prius, let's say, gets 50 miles per gallon. There's something called miles per gallon equivalent, MPGE, for electric vehicles. And if you take something like Nissan Leaf or Tesla Model 3, it's almost 3 times more, almost 150 mpge. Model S, because of it's bigger and heavier, it gets slightly lower. But the dual motor Model 3 is 3 times more efficient than a Prius. And then electric bikes, on the other hand, are even more efficient, probably 10 times more efficient than a Model 3. You that might sound ridiculous, but it is so true because Model 3 consumes 230 average of 230 watt hour per mile. The average consumption of an e-bike is 20 watt hour per mile, 15 to 20 watt hour per mile, almost 10 times.
Wow.
So we are talking about orders of magnitude more efficient. So how do I prove this efficiency thing? So I thought, all right, how about we do a 24-hour endurance ride and see if I can hit a 400-mile mark. And if basically using less than $1 electricity, we wanted to do 400 miles in 24 hours. That was the goal. And basically, $1 or 80 cents of electricity could transform an absolutely ordinary person like me to a RAM category. So think of it.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And well, the funny thing is, to me, you don't consider yourself a cyclist, and I am. I rode the bike for a few laps while you were resting. I don't think it was your bike; it was a different one. But I was impressed at how hard it was to keep the pace that you were going. So you did some training for this, and you are a better rider than you give yourself credit for.
Well, you're being generous, Tony, but thank you. I did train. I did train, and I knew the effort it takes because to maintain 24, 25 miles an hour for a long periods of time takes some effort. And the motor did help a lot. The Bafang Ultra motor, it was at 750 watt, 750 watt nominal motor, but it was pretty useful. But we were averaging 40 miles for every 800 watts, so roughly 20 watt hour per mile, and that's a very decent number at that speed. And at the end of it, when we did so, the actual GPS on my bike shows 398 miles, and then the Guinness World Record organization only counts the number of laps. So we did 1,500 plus laps. So that comes down to 392 miles or something like that. But I could have never done that kind of mileage on a regular bike. Probably I could do 200, but almost 400. It's almost RAM level, Race Across America level. And it shows how transformative. This ride was not to show the athletic ability, but to show the power of e-bikes, the power and the capable, transformative nature of e-bikes. You can take somebody who is decently fit, athletic enough like me, and then you can do absolutely incredible things. 400 miles in 24 hours using, that was 80 Canadian cents of electricity. So that's like 70 cents in the US dollar. And that kind of efficiency is amazing. So more people should hear it. And that's where I think our effort and then your effort as the editor of Electric Bike Action magazine comes into picture. The more people hear it, we are just at the inflection point where the market is taking off. The regular analog bicycle market is pretty stagnant, whereas the electric bike market is growing in double digits, which is unheard of in the bicycle industry. So that shows the transformative nature of e-bikes, and our effort was just to highlight some of the efficiency aspects of it.
Oh, yeah. And you did what, 9 battery swaps, I think?
10. We had 10, and then
okay.
10, and then I was on the 11th. I had just started on the 11th one, but yeah, 10 battery swaps. Each one each battery was 880 watt hour, but I would swap the battery in the last 10%. So 800 watt hour, roughly 800 watt hour per cycle, and then I was doing 40 miles, close to 40 miles. So 10 swaps at the end of it.
That's an amazing, and that's the 750 watt mid drive. So that's pulling a lot of juice, and really amazing. It was a third of a mile track, was it? What was
it was a third of a mile
distance?
track. Yes, it was a third of a mile track with some banking, and I was on the first lane, so I had to do close to 1,800 laps to get to 450 miles, which was the original plan. The goal was pretty ambitious. Let's do 450 miles using less than $1 of electricity. But as I got into the night and then fatigue kicked in, I had never been on the bike for so. I mean, I had been on the bike, but continuously. We averaged 25 miles an hour for the first 12 hours. So we beat the first record. By the time I finished first 12-hour lap, the half the day, we were already at 241 miles. So roughly another 200 miles, should have been possible, but it was. I think my body was not up to the task, so we had to settle for just shy of 400 miles.
It's still very impressive. I mean, you shattered both records.
Thank you, Tony. It was my focus right now, or the effort. I would put all the credit to the e-bike, because if you put somebody like Shauna, the Ram finisher, she's the legendary rider. She's a Tony's good friend. If you put somebody like Shauna on an e-bike, God knows what they will do, probably like 600 miles. But at that level, it becomes the wind and the speed, aerodynamic drag becomes the limiting factor. So let's say even at 28, they could easily do 550, 600 miles. So for a person who is decently athletic, I think 400 is pretty decent. But I'm just still amazed at the whole technology. It's been 5 years, and I still enjoy, and it's the same. It's the same joy every time I get on the bike. It's I feel, wow, this is amazing. So overall, and I must thank people like you who came all the way, helped spread the word. You do an amazing job, Tony, writing amazing articles.
Thank you.
Reviews, excellent pictures. So I would say it's a team effort to popularize or highlight the efficiency of e-bikes. It is never an individual effort.
No, not at all. And it's always fun seeing you ride because you have a smile on your face. So talk to me a little bit about the bike, the Watt Wagon. Tell me about how did you actually come to pick that particular bike? Sure.
That's a very interesting question, because the origin of Watt Wagon is interesting. So I'm active on some of the electric vehicle forums, and then whether it is Tesla forum or electric bike review forum or Reddit, the forum. I try to keep track of things, and then in the early 2019, January of 2019, I noticed somebody had built a really nice bike, but it was lacking some details. And they had built a bike out of Bafang Ultra motor. Bafang is a pretty, it's a thriving company. Bosch, big companies like Bosch, Yamaha have been in the market for a long time, but Bafang is, making it smart, because they supply the motors to companies like Rad Power Bikes, Juiced Bikes, and there's a whole bunch of other bikes use Bafang motors. So their volumes are pretty high, and close to like 100,000 motors a year, combining all the output around the world. And somebody had built a titanium frame bike with the Bafang Ultra motor. It had the Gates carbon drive, belt drive, but details like suspension, the brakes, and then the drivetrain, the hub, and lighting, and some of those things were not completely done. The battery, I saw there's room for improvement here. Then I reached out to Pushkar. Pushkar is a young engineer and an entrepreneur who lives in Boston, and we started talking about it. And I thought, well, Pushkar, why don't we refine the bike a little bit more? And he was very enthusiastic, very affable person. And then we started refining the bike. So we almost, we carefully picked every component. For example, it has the roll-off speed hub, known for extreme durability. And it has the Gates carbon drive. It has got an very nice suspension fork. And the highlight basically was the battery and the charger. battery was, nothing different. It is not a very stealthy design, but it still packs 880 watt hours. And then we used the cycle satiator, which is one of the best chargers available on the market. It can charge a 48 volt or a 52 volt battery at 7 or 8 amps. If it is a 48 volt, it charges at 8 amps. So you can refill a 18 amp hour pack in 2 hours, in just over 2 hours. And for a 52 volt pack, it charges at 7 amps. So your charging time can be extremely small. And so we started refining everything. We built the bike to a level where it is extremely capable. You can take it as a cross-country touring bike or a commuting bike. And then I thought, all right, we have built a bike that is really nice. Maybe, and then at that time, everything was coming together. I had just had an offer to work with Professor Jeff Dawn. I was meeting him, and then we had just built this bike. Professor Jeff Dawn, as you know, is the world's foremost battery scientist, and I thought it would be a good tribute if we do the record in Halifax, Canada, where some of the best inventions in the modern day lithium-ion battery has come from. So we started putting pieces together, and that's how the bike came into fruition. That's how we selected the location. So just to give us very brief history of Halifax, Professor Jeff Dawn has been working at the Dalhousie University since early 90s. And he, in the year 1999, invented a material called NMC, nickel manganese cobalt oxide. This NMC is the cathode, and most of the batteries use graphite as the anode. So the NMC cathode, back then, it was not wildly popular as it is now, but it was, they started refining it. He worked on the lifetime of it, enhancing the energy density and enhancing the cycle life of the NMC cathode. And nowadays, you can find those in most power tools, and you can find them in Tesla Powerwall. You can find them in many electric cars. I think Chevy Bolt has it. The Nissan Leaf has a mix of lithium manganese oxide and NMC. So the whole Tesla energy, used in the Powerwall, the Mega Pack, their installations in Australia where they installed this energy farm, they all use NMC cathode. And Professor Dawn has been at the forefront of this research for many decades. And he's an extremely he's a fantastic teacher, researcher, and he mentors people, young people like me, who want to get into this field. He's very generous with his time. He's generous with his knowledge. And I thought Halifax is the best place to attempt a world record to highlight the efficiency of EVs. And on top of that, Professor Jeff Dawn right now is the Tesla research chair, and he heads the group. He has a direct partnership with Tesla, and some of his inventions are being used in the Tesla products right now. So I could not have picked a better place to attempt the record. And he was fortunate enough to be on that day to officiate the event. You met him, and you even did a podcast with him. So you can share your experience, your side of things as well.
Oh, I mean, he's such an approachable, easy to talk to person. And it was funny, we went out to dinner that night before, and I purposely didn't sit next to him because I didn't want to start asking him questions before recording the podcast episode. But he was so nice and so generous, and he's a very approachable person, and I can't understand how amazing his mind is to understand, because he's a professor of physics and of chemistry, and to understand the relationship of both of those and how it goes into picking alternate materials to try in batteries to make them, last longer, to be cheaper, and more energy dense. It's just it's amazing. So it was a treat, and I'm really grateful to you for setting all of that up.
Oh, I feel the same, Tony. Thank you. It was a privilege to have him on that day. So when we look at the chessboard, we see black and white squares and then some pawns and here and there. But when a grandmaster looks at the chessboard, he see hundreds of moves ahead, hundreds of moves, possibilities and all that. So I kind of think like that. And when Professor Jeff Down looks at something, he's like the grandmaster looking at it, because he has been in the field for almost 30 years. He knows the in and out of the system, and his inventions have made. So an interesting piece of information: before he became the Tesla research chair at the Dalhousie University in Canada research chair, he had an exclusive partnership with a big company called 3M. 3M is a huge multinational company that does polymer products, coating, paints, you name it. They have their hand in almost everything.
Post-it
and
notes.
He had yes, of course. They have amazing variety of products. And he was the research chair, and he was, in exclusive contract with 3M. And 3M licensed the product NMC cathode, and they licensed it and sold it all around the world. And the market share of NMC cathode is almost $1.1 billion. It's huge in China. If you go into China, you will see a company called CATL, and Li Sheng. These are some of the big manufacturers. When we hear about battery cell manufacturers, we always think of Samsung, LG, Panasonic, Sony, but there are other big players too. There are three of them big players. One is called CATL, and then BYD, and then Li Sheng. All these are huge players. They supply battery cells to electronic giants, automotive giants. So NMC is being used in all of those. So I think overall, we were able to highlight the efficiency at the end of it. At the end of the world record, I'm almost getting the. I'm just waiting for the final verification from Guinness. It should come in about a few weeks, and I'll update you soon.
Oh, excellent. Let me go back just a little bit. So on the day that you were doing this, you did take some breaks.
Yes, I did.
And you got a little bit. You took a couple of naps, and I still remember the last nap you took, and it was early in the morning. It was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and you were out, and everybody sort of started breaking down stuff. And I remember you getting up, and you walked over to Pushkar, and I don't know what was said, but you looked like a total zombie. I mean, you were just like, you were staring straight ahead and stuff. And I remember you got on the bike, and you were just a machine, and you took off again, and you rode for several more hours. I was so impressed by that.
Oh, Tony, thank you. But I was so exhausted by the time it was 3 o'clock, and then I saw that, all right, if I take an hour break, and then probably I could cross 415 miles at the end of it. We started around 7:53 in the morning, so I took an hour break, but then by that time we were already at, I think, 350 miles or something. So people thought, all right, maybe he's done. And then when I woke up, it was already like 5 o'clock. So I just had like 2 hours 30 minutes. So I had to get on, because we had put all this energy into it, and you realize, okay, you just have 2.5 hours. The clock is ticking. You can't afford to lose time. So, and somehow I gathered some energy, and then I was able to do it. But I came so close to 400. I feel that I should have maybe taken a shorter nap and crossed the number 400. That would have been nice. But it is what it is.
Well, you still went. What was the previous record?
previous record was, I think it was around 200 miles or some 230 miles. So we almost, added 160 extra miles to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty impressive. That's, for somebody who's not an ultra cyclist, that's a huge number.
Yeah, overall it was a pretty intense day, but very satisfying at the end of it. And as I said, it is never an individual effort. There were so many great people: Paula, my girlfriend, Pushkar, you, and Pushkar's friend who were there. They all come to I couldn't have done it without all these people. It's I'm very, very grateful for all of them.
Well, it was fun to be a part of it.
Thank you, Tony. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that'll do it. I can't think of anything else to ask you. So, but thank you so much for spending the time to do this, and it was such a fun thing to be part of that, and thank you for bringing me up there.
Oh, my pleasure. Tony, you bring a wealth of experience, knowledge, and it's a privilege and a pleasure to have somebody of your stature. And we are all in this together, and I think we did our small part to share the beauty and the all the good stuff about e-bikes. And this podcast is of course one of them. But thank you for all that you do. Hopefully we will meet again in Halifax next year.
I'm definitely up for that. So
yeah, that'll be fun. That will be the next podcast in the series where we go to Professor Don's lab and then we tour the lab and get to know the latest research that's coming out of the research lab like that. He showed us some results this time where there are, he showed us some absolutely mind-boggling numbers. There are cells right now in production that will last 20 years, 6,000 cycles. And at the end of 6,000 cycle, the degradation in the battery will be less than 8%, more like 5%.
That is amazing.
Yeah, that is absolutely incredible. Those will be used in something called megapacks. Tesla has something called megapacks. So just to close the loop here, there's something called peaker plants. When we so everybody gets home, people go to work at 7, 8 in the morning, come back at 5. When they come back at 5, everybody turns on the TV and the AC and stuff like that. Suddenly, the demand on the grid goes high. To supplement that extra load demand, there's a regular power station. There's something called peaker plants. They operate they supply power when it is needed at those peak times. And you can't turn them off because these power plants, coal-fired power plants, so you can't turn them off. And then these peaker plants also run on natural gas or coal. So they tune it down, but still it has to be on all the time. And it produces a lot of pollution, a lot of, it's extra load, unnecessary. That's why they want you to consume power at night because, they want, the utility companies want you to run your dryer, washer at night because when the load is low, the grid is much more healthy. When the grid becomes much more loaded, right, it's difficult. But the mega packs are something that can be deployed at 1/3 of the cost. They'll reduce emissions by 80%, and it will save you a ton of money. It was deployed in Australia, and it has saved them $40 million in the very first year. And they respond to changes in the grid within milliseconds, whereas the peaker plants take a couple of seconds. So there are amazing benefits, and the batteries is changing the way things are being done. So it's exciting time, and then I'm very excited to share all that. Next time when we take the trip to Halifax, we will get to learn about all these things, and we'll visit a wind farm. it'll be a fantastic day. So we'll plan something like that in the spring of 2020. Yeah.
That sounds great. So the one in Australia you were talking about, is that the giant power wall that they built?
Yeah, it's called, the giant power wall is called a megapack. Basically, they stack hundreds of power walls together and it's called megapack. So the whole thing started, in a very funny way. Somebody on Twitter said, hey, Elon, why don't we do this? The Southern Australia is reeling under power cuts. The whole, half the state was under darkness and everybody was frustrated because these tornadoes and rain keep, destroying the power lines, and then the whole city goes under, and then, you can't function properly. So anyway, somebody tweeted at Elon saying, hey, Elon, why don't you set up a Tesla giga wall or a power wall, kind of a big power station here, and we will fund you. And somebody, Elon, responded and said, all right, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And the other guy, the guy who tweeted was an investor. He said, all right, what if I can make the money happen when you do it? Elon said, of course. If I can't do it in 100 days, it's free. The whole thing is free for you. so somebody, and that started like that. And then they brought all the investors in. They pitched, they got the whole installation done. Tesla finished the installation within 100 days, I think more like 85 days or 90 days. It was running. And when the power cut happened next time, the installation responded within milliseconds. It was unheard of. No peaker plant, whether it is natural gas or coal-fired plant, can respond within millisecond. But this responded. And the best thing is, when you don't need it, you don't drain the battery. It stays like that, and you can recharge through solar or wind. And when you don't, unlike the peaker plants, which all constantly need to be running, these battery installations don't run when it is not under load. So anyway, these are all absolutely fascinating things, and good times to live in.
That's impressive. Wow, what a great solution to a problem.
Yes. Tony, thanks again for having me on this podcast, and you do an incredible job sharing all the reviews and technological information on your website, and I look forward to seeing you in Halifax next year.
Yes, sir. I look forward to that as well, and it's just a complete blast learning all this stuff and seeing the technology change. I've followed electric bikes since 2001, so even just the past, since you started looking at them in 2013, look at the difference in the technology that we have in this space versus all of batteries, which is it's just incredible.
Well, you were the first one to interview Lee Iacocca, right? Or you go way back. Probably you're the one of the earliest people to ever put their hands on an e-bike.
I was a professional photographer, so I shot all of Lee's advertising and promotional materials for e-bike. So I got to ride those bikes back then, and they were lead acid and overpriced and underpowered and had no range, and just not. He had a vision that was a good 15 years ahead of the technology that he had available, but he saw this as the future of transportation.
Amazing. Well, you have seen the entire gamut of e-bikes from the very beginning to you get to put your hands on the very latest tech. So I look forward to reading all your reviews. It's absolutely incredible. The pace of innovation is absolutely astounding.
It is. Well, and thanks to people like you who are going to push it even further. Well,
sure. It's all community work. Research community is putting all the effort, and you are doing amazing work. And hopefully, we will have an e-bike in a few years. That'll be But I wonder, do we really need a 100-mile range e-bike? How far can we push the technology? Maybe we can make it lighter, but do we really need a 100-mile range e-bike? I don't think so.
Well, it just depends on riders whether they want to ride 100 miles or they would rather have a bike that has less range but is far cheaper.
Right. Affordability is a big thing, yes.
Yep. So all of that stuff that Professor Don and I'm guessing you are working on.
Of course, yeah. That's the whole idea, is to make the batteries affordable. Once they reach $100 per kilowatt hour price range, gasoline or any petrol or diesel vehicles will be just doesn't make sense. It will be the end. I mean, that it's already happening, but that will be the final nail on the coffin.
Yep. Well, I'm looking forward to that, actually. I think that's going to be great, and I think the people that still drive internal combustion engine cars are going to be the enthusiasts that are left over that just love those, which is perfectly fine.
Right.
All right.
Well, thanks again, Dylan. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Electric Bike Action Podcast. For the latest reviews and information, visit electricbikeaction.com, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Stitcher or Google or wherever you get your podcasts, and give us a rating and review to help spread the word about e-bikes. You can also email me at tonyd@hightorque.com. That's TONYD at hi-torque.com. I'm happy to answer questions and would love to hear your experiences and adventures on e-bikes. This podcast is powered by Callcast.